In this video, we are going to continue to talk about how to simplify fractions using divisibility tests. Our examples this time will involve fractions that may take more than one step to simplify. The simplified form of a fraction is a new fraction that is equivalent to the original fraction and has the smallest possible numerator and denominator. To simplify a fraction, find whole numbers that divide evenly into both the numerator and denominator. If you need to review the divisibility tests, click on the link above for a video. Sometimes we find the simplified form of a fraction in a single step, but that doesn't always happen. After dividing both numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number to get a simpler form, it is very important to take a look at that simpler form and see if it simplifies further. Here is an example of a situation in which this is necessary. Consider the fraction 8/20. We apply the divisibility test in the order 10, 5, 2, 3. First, check 10. Although 20 ends in a 0, 8 does not, so we cannot divide both numerator and denominator by 10. Next, check 5. 20 ends in a 0, so it is divisible by 5, but 8 is not divisible by 5, so we cannot divide both numerator and denominator by 5. Now check for divisibility by 2. Both 8 and 20 are even numbers, so they are both divisible by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. So 8/20 equals 4/10. 4/10 is a simpler form of 8/20. But is this the completely simplified form? We have to ask ourselves whether there are numbers that divide evenly into both 4 and 10. Since the divisibility tests for 10 and 5 failed for the original fraction 8/20, we do not have to try them again. But the divisibility test for 2 did work with 8/20, so it is possible that it might work again with 4/10. 4 and 10 both are even numbers, so both are divisible by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So an even simpler form of 8/20 is 2/5. Are we finished? We need to ask ourselves whether there is a number that divides evenly into both 2 and 5. 2 and 5 are both small enough so that it is easy for us to see that there are no numbers that divide evenly into both. So the fully simplified form of 8/20 is 2/5. To make things easier, sometimes you can take a look at the numerator and denominator of the original fraction, and you can tell just by looking that a number would divide evenly into both. For example, with the fraction 8/20, you might notice that 4 divides evenly into both 8 and 20. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 20 divided by 4 is 5. So 8/20 equals 2/5. Using a bit of insight allowed us to simplify 8/20 in a single step rather than the two-step process we used before. When you want to simplify a fraction, it is always worth looking at both the numerator and denominator to see if you can find the number that divides evenly into both. If you don't notice any, then use the divisibility tests. Let's look at another example. Consider 42/30. 30 ends in a 0, so it is divisible by 10, but 42 does not end in a 0, so it is not divisible by 10. Next, let's check 5. 30 ends in a 0, so it is divisible by 5, but 42 does not end in either a 0 or 5, so 42 is not divisible by 5. Then check 2. 30 and 42 are both even, so they are both divisible by 2. Dividing both by 2 gives 21/15. Is that the simplest form? We don't have to try 10 and 5 since those tests failed the first time. And since both 21 and 15 are odd numbers, we cannot divide both by 2. So we need to apply the divisibility test for 3 to both 21 and 15. Let's do 21 first. We need to add up the digits. 2 plus 1 is 3, so 21 is divisible by 3. 1 plus 5 is 6, so 15 is divisible by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. This gives us 7/5. From here we can see that there are no other numbers that divide evenly into both 7 and 5, so 7/5 is the fully simplified form of 42/30. Let's summarize what we have learned about simplifying fractions using the divisibility tests. The simplified form of a fraction is a new fraction that is equivalent to the original fraction and has the smallest possible numerator and denominator. To simplify a fraction, find whole numbers that divide evenly into both the numerator and denominator. It's best to first look at both the numerator and denominator to see if you can easily see a number that you know divides evenly into both. After that, apply the divisibility tests in the order 10, 5, 2, 3. After each simplification, It is important to check to see if another number might divide evenly into both the numerator and denominator. There is no simple way to see if a number is divisible by 7 or 11 unless either the numerator and denominator are small, so it is worth checking with a calculator. Simplifying a fraction can take some time, but with practice, one can learn to do it efficiently.